You got to ask yourself that question if you're afraid. If you are afraid of starting something, of trying something, of doing something, you got to ask yourself the question, what's the worst that could happen? Welcome to the Creative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I'm super happy you're here. On the show, I focus on creative thinking, problem solving, and living. Most often, I'll discuss how to ignite inspiration, meet challenges, and achieve goals through creative thinking. Sometimes I'll have guests who give their perspective. Usually, it's people who are
Hello,
already
and welcome
living
to the
their
Creative
best
Mindset
and most
Podcast.
creative
My name
lives.
is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I
let's
am
get to it.
delighted that you are here. This is going to be another one of those short episodes, and it's a really simple one. And the question that I have to ask myself and you is, what's the worst that could happen? And why am I bringing this up right now? It's really simple, actually. It's because of this podcast. I am looking more to sort of getting more interviews, getting more interaction, bringing in people who are really deep thinkers about creativity and being a top performer, whether you're a singer, a dancer, an actor, an accountant, a lawyer, it doesn't matter. It's about using creative thinking to live your best life and do your best work. And so because of that, I have started sort of shooting it out of the park, or at least aiming to shoot it out of the park. And I've started asking people I never even would have dreamed to ask to be on the show even 3 weeks ago. So I'm very excited about some of the upcoming guests. I'm not going to tell you about them yet because I'm going to let it be a surprise. But I've gotten some people who I really didn't think would say yes. And it's not that I've gotten them to say yes. It's that they've been gracious and accepted the invitation. I mean, come on. How exciting is that? So this is sort of my way of saying, you got to ask yourself that question if you're afraid. If you are afraid of starting something, of trying something, of doing something, you got to ask yourself the question, what's the worst that could happen? Seriously. So they say no. They could say no. You might not achieve what you want to achieve. I could have heard no. I could have gotten it's not something I do. Sorry. I remember there was one time there was a producer who did a bunch of 70s and 80s shows that I just loved, and I'm not going to tell you who it is just because I don't want to embarrass myself. But I loved his shows, and I was really excited that he and I started communicating on email. I had some questions for him that only a Russian speaker would ask, really, and I was right about the answers. And I just emailed him, and I went, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I asked him these questions, and he said, yes, I was right with what I had thought, and it was really exciting, and I loved that part of it. And at the time, I was writing my own screenplay based on my first book, The Fiddler's Talisman. And I thought, what's the worst that could happen? And I did it. I asked him if he'd read it, and he immediately went, oh, no, my lawyers say that I'm not allowed to read anybody's scripts. And that was really the end of our relationship. That was the end of our friendship. I think he thought that I was just trying to get him to read my script, which was not the case. I didn't think of that until way into the process of developing a friendship with him. But I thought, why not? Let's ask. And so that was one of those times that really it was formative in some ways because it kind of made me go, oh, I shouldn't ask. I shouldn't even bother. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of gotten to a place where I go, you know what? Bother. Do it. Try it. Even if they say no, even if something like that happens, perhaps that relationship wasn't meant to deepen into a real friendship anyway. It just happens that way sometimes. So I actually, despite some fear and trepidation, earlier this week, got on email and went, hey, you fabulous person who I really respect and who's taught me a lot, would you be on my podcast? And I kind of cringed as I waited to see what he would say. And he was like, absolutely, I'd love to be on the show. Phew. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, is that, yeah, I was already head shy. I was already waiting for an absolutely not. What are you talking about? And instead I got a, hey, of course, I'd love to be on your show. So it was just about having the confidence of asking. And even though I had the experience with the gentleman who did all those shows in the 70s and 80s, I have to sort of step back from that and go, okay, so that's how it is sometimes. And now I'm enriched by the experience. I'm glad I got to know him a little bit. I'm enriched by that experience. I learned a lot. I hope I provided value to him as part of our conversations. And then I have to let it go because ultimately it's not my job to what is it that RuPaul says? What people say about me behind my back ain't none of my business. And it's kind of the same way here. I thought it would be amazing if he were to read my script, right? It didn't work out. And I can beat myself up or I can go, it didn't work out. And that's kind of where I came to with it. Even though this last week when I went, I'm going to ask him to be on the show. And he's such a wise man. He's so good. He's going to be an amazing guest. And I'm so excited. I've learned so much from him. And so, yeah, this is a big old teaser for who he's going to be. And anyway, it doesn't matter because he's already said yes. I'm really excited, even though I was scared to ask. And sometimes you just have to go, okay, the courage has to be there from somewhere. I have to get my courage up and I just have to do it. I have to take the leap of faith. And that's it. That's how I do it. And so I encourage you, especially right now when we're sort of in a crucible, right? We're in this cauldron of anything could happen over these next few months. So whatever it is you're thinking of that you might be afraid to do or to try, now's the time. Ask yourself the question, what's the worst that can happen? They can say, no, you might not make it. You might not do it. And I can ask you to look at it as something that my acupuncturist, Dr. Yumi, says. And I love that she says this. She says, if not this door, another door. And I thought, the first time I heard it, I was like, that's brilliant. And it is brilliant because it tells you something. I really believe that when you are walking the path you're supposed to be walking, the universe opens the doors right in front of you. And when you're not walking the path you're supposed to be walking, that's the best path for you, the highest path for you, then doors keep getting slammed in your face. So I don't know if Kenny was meant to read my screenplay. I just don't know if he was. That's okay, right? It's okay to go, hey, that was not meant to be. And ultimately, when I look back at the screenplay, I'm glad I didn't show it to him because it wasn't ready to be really shown. So that's the way it was. And I waited and another door opened. And this week, if this gentleman had said no, I would have said, okay, thank you so much. And I would have gone to the next door. And that's what it's all about. So ask yourself the question, figure out what the worst is that could happen. Name it, see if you can live with it, and then go do what you're dreaming about doing. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Mindset Podcast. I'm sending you all of my love, and I'm hoping that you are walking your highest path even during this turbulent time. In the moment, in the meantime, let's get to it.
Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and please tell your friends about the community we're building here. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright Isolde Trachtenberg 2019. Today's music was from Kevin MacLeod, Laser Groove, and Ave Marimba, brought to you by Creative Commons License 3.0. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, I send you all of my love.